Midi-Pyrénées, Occitan, Mayagon Pyrenees or Media Pyrenees, Spanish, Mediodia Pyrenees, is the largest region of metropolitan France by area, larger than the Netherlands or Denmark. Midi-Pyrénées has no historical or geographical unity. It is one of the regions of France created in the late 20th century to serve as a hinterland and zone of influence for its capital, Toulouse, one of a handful of so-called balancing metropolises. Another example of this is the region of Rhône-Alpes, which was created as the region for Lyon. The name chosen for the new region was decided by the French government without reference to the historical provinces. The name was based on geography, Midi-Pyrénées, although the region also includes the southernmost part of the Massif Central, which has better communications with Languedoc-Roussillon than with Toulouse. The French adjective and name of the inhabitants of the region is Midi-Pyrénéen. Geographical composition. Historically, Midi-Pyrénées is made up of several former French provinces. 24.2% of the Midi-Pyrénées territory formed part of Gascony, western half of Haute-Garonne department, southwest of Tarn-et-Garonne, Gers in its entirety, extreme north of Hautes-Pyrénées. Gascony here includes the province of Comminges, which historically was a Pyrenean province, but later expanded all the way north to Muret in the southern suburbs of Toulouse, then was fragmented, and became an eastern fringe of Gascony. Gascony also extends over the Aquitaine region. 23.4% of Midi-Pyrénées was part of Languedoc. The eastern half of Haute-Garonne, southeast of Tarn-et-Garonne, Tarn in its entirety, northwest and northeast of Ariège. Languedoc includes the sub-province of Albigeois, which is sometimes considered as a province separate from Languedoc. Languedoc also extends over the Languedoc-Roussillon region. 19.9% of Midi-Pyrénées was formerly Rouergue, Aveyron department in its entirety, and extreme east of Tarn-et-Garonne. The former province of Rouergue lay entirely within the modern Midi-Pyrénées. 15.4% of Midi-Pyrénées was Quercy, department of Lot in its entirety, and northern half of Tarn-et-Garonne. The province of Quercy was entirely contained inside Midi-Pyrénées. 16.6% of Midi-Pyrénées was a collection of small Pyrenean provinces, from east to west. The county of Foix, Couserans, Nebuzan, Quatre-Valles, and Bigorre. All these provinces are entirely contained inside Midi-Pyrénées. 0.5% of Midi-Pyrénées is Agenais, extreme west of Tarn-et-Garonne. Agenais extends essentially over the Aquitaine region. The historical makeup of Midi-Pyrénées is even more complex, as the provinces listed here are further subdivided into pays used interchangeably in French for country, area, land, etc., each with its own particular identity, such as Armagnac, Astarac, or Le Magne inside the Gascogne part of Midi-Pyrénées. Lorigues or Volvester inside the Languedoc part of Midi-Pyrénées, Bonnezan inside county of Foix, Lavaudan inside Bigorre, and so on. The Pyrenean provinces of Couserans, Nebuzan, Quatre-Valles, and Bigorre are sometimes considered to be part of Gascony. These provinces were all formed from the old Roman province of Novem Populana, later known as Vasconia, and later as Gascony, from which they seceded over time. Furthermore, after the 16th century these Pyrenean provinces were made part of the military region of Gascony, and later in the 18th century they were ruled from Auch by the intendant of Auch, as with the rest of Gascony. If these Pyrenean provinces are included inside Gascony, then 35.4% of Midi-Pyrénées is Gascony, outweighing Languedoc and its 23.4%. This point is still a matter of debate. The Pyrenean provinces developed strong peculiarities over time, protected by their isolated valleys, and they looked quite distinct from the rest of Gascony. What's more, Bigorre, Quatre-Valles, Nebuzan, and even Cominges kept their provincial states until the French Revolution, while Gascony had no provincial states. These Pyrenean provinces sent their representatives to the Estates General of 1789 in Versailles at the beginning of the Revolution, whereas the various other parts of Gascony sent their own representatives. Finally, it should be noted that in demographic terms, given the overwhelming demographic weight of Toulouse, the majority of the inhabitants of Midi-Pyrénées live in the Languedoc part of Midi-Pyrénées. As a matter of fact, the historical flag of Languedoc, the Occitan Cross, was adopted as the official flag of the Midi-Pyrénées region by the Regional Council. This historic flag design is itself derived from the coat of arms of the old county of Toulouse. Elements of unity in the Middle Ages. Most of what is now Midi-Pyrénées was ruled at some time or another by the Counts of Toulouse, either directly or through vassals. After the French conquest in the 13th century, the county of Toulouse was dismantled, and eventually Languedoc was born as a remnant of the old county, but quite smaller than it. Nonetheless, until the French Revolution, the Parlement of Toulouse extended its jurisdiction over not just Languedoc, but also all the other territories that are now Midi-Pyrénées. Thus, towns like Tarbes, Auch, or Rodez were already under the jurisdiction of Toulouse before the Revolution, although only for judicial and legal matters. Demographics. In terms of population, Midi-Pyrénées is again a region of sharp contrasts. While the metropolitan area of Toulouse at the center of the region is a densely populated area, in some places reaching 3,500 inhabitants per square kilometer. The rest of the region is sparsely populated, with densities ranging from 12 to 60 INH per km squared, which are among the lowest densities in Western Europe. Toulouse is often presented as an oasis in the middle of a desert. Driving a mere half-hour out of Toulouse, one goes from the hustle and bustle of the busy metropolitan area to the slow pace and timelessness of the hilly countryside of Gascony or Lorigues, and the narrow winding roads with infrequent traffic. The territory now comprising Midi-Pyrénées was divided in two by its traditional dialects of Occitan, Languedocian and Gascon, with Toulouse lying by the limit between the two. On the Languedocian side, Gascon was traditionally spoken in the west and southwest of the region. Gascony, Bigorre, Quatre-Valles, Nebuzan, Cominges, Couserans, while other variants of Occitan were spoken in the east and northeast of the region. Languedoc, Rouergue, Quercy, and Comté des Foix. Today, French is dominant throughout the region. Midi-Pyrénées is unlike Catalonia or northern Wales, where the regional languages are still very much part of everyday life in urban areas at least. Occitan was used on a daily basis in the Garonne and Tarn valleys until the beginning of the 20th century. More distant and isolated regions resisted longer, and as late as in the 1970s it was still possible to hear Occitan in the farmer markets of Gascony or Rouergue. Nonetheless, even there, changes in the last 30 years of the 20th century were dramatic. Despite regional efforts to revive the language by teaching it in schools, today, Languedocian Occitan is essentially only spoken by the older people in the distant areas of Quercy, Rouergue, and the county of Foix, and Gascon is only spoken by older people in distant areas of Gascony and the Pyrenees valleys. The regional channel France 3 broadcasts programs in Occitan a few hours per week. Speakers of Gascon complain of the hegemony of Languedocian Occitan and its cultural centre of Toulouse, and some followers of a self-proclaimed linguist, Lafitte, even reject the classification of Gascon as a dialect of Occitan. Today, although the daily use of regional languages of Midi-Pyrénées is greatly diminished, they have left a strong imprint on the French language used in the region. French in Midi-Pyrénées is spoken with a distinct southwestern pronunciation. Moreover, People in Midi-Pyrénées use some words and expressions of Occitan origin which differ from those of Standard French. These may not be easily understood outside of southwest France. The population in the metropolitan area of Toulouse is significantly younger and with a higher level of education than in the rest of Midi-Pyrénées. Outside of Toulouse, Midi-Pyrénées is an aging region, which combines with a loss of population, as can be also seen in Limousin or other declining areas of France. Incomes are also rather high in the Toulouse metropolitan area, among the highest in France outside of the metropolitan area of Paris, Lyon and Marseille, whereas outside of Toulouse incomes in Midi-Pyrénées are rather low, among the lowest in France. The metropolitan area of Toulouse far outweighs the second largest metropolitan area of Midi-Pyrénées, Tarbes, with only 110,000 inhabitants. For all these reasons, Midi-Pyrénées is often dubbed Toulouse and the Midi-Pyrenean Desert, in reference to the famous phrase, Paris and the French Desert, coined by the French geographer Jean-François Gravier in 1947, when it was felt that the ever-expanding urban area of Paris, so much larger than any other city in France, would soon attract all the French population and economy, turning the rest of the country into a desert. Residents elsewhere in Midi-Pyrénées at times complain of the overwhelming weight of Toulouse inside the region, and they resent the fact that so much is done for Toulouse by the regional council, turning the Midi-Pyrénées region into a region of Toulouse. Indeed, the city of Toulouse adopted the Occitan flag as its official flag, thus Toulouse and Midi-Pyrénées currently share the same flag. Despite the controversy, most researchers agree that far from distracting resources and workers from the rest of the region, Toulouse is actually acting as a locomotive for the whole region. Without Toulouse, Midi-Pyrénées would probably be declining much more than it has in the recent decades, both demographically and culturally as well as economically. Identity. Despite all these differences, it is wrong to assume that Midi-Pyrénées exists only on paper. Since the region was created in the 1970s, a certain sense of a Midi-Pyrenean identity has emerged. Inhabitants of the region share common cultural or social features, some of them not just particular to Midi-Pyrénées, but common to the whole of southwest France, such as an interest in rugby union. The southwest of France is even called the land of the oval ball. There are images that come spontaneously to the mind of Midi-Pyrénées people when thinking about their region, such as the Airbus planes leaving their factories in Toulouse, the snowy peaks of the Pyrenees, or a game of rugby. These three images were used for some time by the regional council in video clips to promote the distinct identity of the region. The regional council has also played a key role in developing a network of motorways, freeways to bring all the different areas of Midi-Pyrénées together. A network of regional express trains was also set up by the regional council to ensure frequent train connections between the different parts of the region. Perhaps more importantly, the dynamism of Toulouse, as well as the fact that many young people from Midi-Pyrénées moved to Toulouse after high school, means that the inhabitants of Midi-Pyrénées identify more and more with the regional capital, which acts as a strong bond between people and areas otherwise quite diverse. When traveling away from southern France, someone from Midi-Pyrénées will in most cases introduce oneself as coming from Toulouse. Unlike other regions of France, in Midi-Pyrénées there exists no other regional city that can rival Toulouse, so all turn toward Toulouse, which is seen as the cultural, economical, and political center. An interesting phenomenon is that Midi-Pyrénées is one of the very few areas in France where young people, when thinking about making it in life, still prefer in their majority to move to their regional capital rather than to Paris, with the Rhône-Alpes region around Lyon and maybe also the Bouches-du-Rhône around Marseille. In most other regions of France, such as Champagne-Ardenne, Centre, or even Burgundy, some of which exist more on paper than in reality, Young people always prefer to move to Paris rather than to their regional capital. The phrase «monter à Paris» was even coined to describe this phenomenon of young people leaving their regions to move to Paris. Here, Midi-Pyrénées stands clearly apart, with Toulouse being largely favored by young people over Paris, which is another proof of the strong identity that has developed around the regional capital. Economy of Midi-Pyrénées. Midi-Pyrénées is the largest region of France. It occupies a strategic position between the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. In 2006, its total GDP was $87.915 billion for a population of 2,755,000. It had a GDP per capita of $32,519 a year with an unemployment of 8.9%, the GDP per employment equal to $80,103 a year. The economy of Midi-Pyrénées can be divided into three sectors. Primary sector. Because of its size, Midi-Pyrénées has the largest number of farms of all France, with 60,000 farms in active use. It has also the largest amount of land readily usable, with 2.6 million hectares. This is however being reduced by both the increasing population and the cap. The departments of the Gauche, Aveyron, Lot and Tarn-et-Garonne have the most significant agricultural activity of the region. Wine production has suffered in recent years from declining demand, reducing prices and overproduction. There are 19 AOC wines in the region. A policy of merging producers into wider groups has been initiated. Secondary sector. The second largest part of the industrial production of the region is the food industry. 4.6 billion euros are generated each year. Agriculture. It is however evolving as it received the fourth largest amount of foreign investment of France and is the region of France that created the largest number of enterprises in 2005, with 14,398 new enterprises. Excluding the construction and civil engineering field, the secondary sector uses 15% of the regional resources. There are several groups who have important offices and structures in the region like Airbus, EADS, Alcatel, Siemens, Bosch and Pierre Fabre. Aerospace industry is an important source of income for the region and employs 57,000 people, not to mention all the surrounding enterprises which work on the engineering, electronic, telecommunication and computing infrastructure for this industry. However, there is a large restructuring plan ongoing and about 10,000 new jobs are expected to be lost outright and partners will be regrouped into larger entities. Tertiary sector. The region has been behind the other French regions for a long time on services. However, this has changed a lot in the recent years and there are many important consulting and telemarketing companies based in the area or with important offices, such as Orange, IBM and Capgemini. It is Toulouse, the largest city and capital, that currently concentrates the largest amount of employment. However, with the progressive extensions of transportation, this has been grown considerably in recent years. In late 2006, a large plan was initiated to replace old train. The circulation of regional train has kept on increasing and has now reached the amount of 10 million journeys each year. With 80,000 students and 15,000 scientists divided into 400 laboratories, the region ranks in France's top 3 for scientific research. Technology transfers to small business enterprises is therefore substantial. Tourism is an important source of incomes for the region, partly due to a sunny climate and the presence of the Pyrénées. It is well known for its gastronomy and quality of life. Aside of casual tourism, the small town of Lourdes, because of religious pilgrimage, is France's second largest tourist destination after Paris and has more hotels than any other city but Paris.